400 physical PlayStation Vita games. 400. My largest collection to date. Why did I do it? Well, I thought the boxes were cute. That wasn't quite the real reason, but it's kind of what kept me going. I was a big fan of the original PSP, and I wanted to continue that, with the promise that Sony made of being backwards compatible with PlayStation Portable, with the thought of them having some way to actually copy over your games from the UMDs to the Vita was interesting. It intrigued me. It was something I was hoping for. Of course, that didn't turn out the way I thought it would. At least the PlayStation Vita was backwards compatible with digital versions of the PSP. Of course, that meant sidestepping games like Birth by Sleep and the Final Fantasy Crisis Core game, which you can get by other means, but still it was a little disappointing. But I was still excited nonetheless. I stood in line on February on launch date 2012 and got the 3G model, which I still have to this day. It was the first one I got before kind of somewhat upgrading to the LCD version because the battery life was better. Especially during that time, I was doing a lot of traveling in my life for work, and I really felt that I got more value out of that compared to other handhelds like the DS or the 3DS at the time. It was far more expensive, especially those memory cards. But I felt I had a better experience with games like Uncharted, Gravity Rush, Killzone, a lot of the first-party Sony games. And of course, we all know that in just about a year and a half, Sony dropped support for it, claiming it was a failure. Then you had companies like Limited Run that came along and actually kept it alive. A lot of indie developers kept programming for it, and they were very fond of the system, just like us in this little niche island, or the Vita Island as it was later coined, and to this day still continues, with a lot of fans still clamoring and saying it's their favorite handhelds. And I'm one of them. Of course, aside from the PlayStation Vita itself as a handheld, you got the PlayStation TV, which I still fondly play and use to stream from time to time on, and I love that little thing. It's eventually what spawned the idea, or at least I think spawned the idea for the Switch, being that you can play it both dock and on dock. And it was kind of a missed opportunity that I hoped eventually the Vita would follow, or at least come up with, but never came to fruition. Nonetheless, it still remains one of my favorite handhelds, and I play it to this day. Heck, even the Killzone servers just recently closed last week, and that's been a long time. So now 40 games a year to reach to this point. And what do I choose for my 400th game? Well, actually one that I was seeking for quite some time, or at least any of the sort. That one happens to be an Asian English release of Sword Art Online Hollow Realization. I mean, and typically this isn't a normal game I would pick up. It's an action RPG, and I'm not a big fan of Sword Art Online, but the games were kind of intriguing, and it was by Namco, or Bandai Namco, who's most known for a lot of the Gundam stuff. But the other unique thing, too, is this is part of the Asian English collection, as some people would say, which isn't a full set that I went for. I kind of picked the ones that I wanted, and I missed out on a lot of them, or just passed over saying, nah, I'll get it later, not realizing that eventually they'd be really hard to get once they went out of print, and you have to get them secondhand. Thankfully, a local store on my end ended up finding a copy, and I ran out and got it. It was kind of pricey, I won't lie. Most of these are. I couldn't tell you which ones were the cheapest or which ones are more expensive, but a lot of them now are gaining upwards towards the $100 mark. So I won't be collecting any more of these. This is probably the last one of that I'll get to. And I'll point at some of the other ones I have. But yeah, 400. And we're going to check out a little bit. We'll sit behind me here. You can see the collection that's been sitting behind in most of my videos. So we'll go over there, and we'll take a look and talk about some of the unique ones that I think stand out mostly in my collection, or at least the ones that I'm fond of. So let's go. going to stop off down here at the bottom of the shelf. As you can see, I've got 3 shelves here from IKEA, just packed full of Vita games. Next to them, of course, you can see these are actually all Dreamcast games. This is a full North American Dreamcast collection, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're actually going to be talking about the Vita. And it starts off basically right here with this import copy of Catherine. And I have them. All of my games for Vita are actually kind of in a set series, so I start off with import Japanese exclusives, followed by Asian English releases, and then into the North American release. So I do have a full North American collection, pretty much. And then I have a handful of like PAL regions, and then some Japanese exclusives. This one was kind of unique for the fact that we didn't get Catherine full body here in the West. This comes including with all the DLC and everything. This is essentially the same port that we got for the Switch. There is no English option for this. It's completely in Japanese, but that doesn't mean it's unplayable, especially considering the game is mostly a puzzle game. And you can, if you've played the English version, you can pretty much navigate through this, but I just thought it was unique to have this game on the go a little bit before the Switch version came out. And I am a very big fan of Catherine, so I kind of wanted to get all the different versions that I could, and being that this was exclusive to Vita, I just had to add it to my list. Moving on from there, another unique one is the Hatsune Miku games. This is one of the variants. There's actually like 3 different variant covers of this one game. And what's special about this is we didn't get this in the West. This was, again, another Japanese exclusive. For whatever reason, we got F2 and another one. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that we didn't get this one, but Japan did. And then there's like this version, the Greatest Hits version, and then a limited edition version cover. As far as most people know, they're all the same version on disc or cartridge. Nothing else too special about it. I do have it in a wrapping, as that's the way I received it. It is opened, of course. The only games that are actually sealed in my collection are the fact that I haven't gotten around to playing them. But just some unique things. This one has a unique story. I was really hoping we would get this one in the West, which we did, but it was a PC-only release. It's a beat-em-up set in kind of the same universe as Senran Kagura. And it's a beat-em-up game. There are certain objectives you have to do to woo over the females in this game and be like the coolest guy on the island. Just kind of a fun little beat 'em up. You can find this on Steam. It's fairly inexpensive, but it's a fun game. Very repetitive. Some people don't like that, but if you're used to beat 'em ups, this is definitely one I would check
Coming
out.
up here towards the top, we have a copy of Resident Evil Revelations 2. This is unique in the fact that this is the English box version. You can actually see there it's written in English on the back side with some Japanese there towards the bottom. But what's kind of, this is more sought after simply because of the fact of the box and the art, but the game inside is actually the same as the Japanese release. In fact, if you actually get the Japanese version, there is English on that cart, so you don't necessarily have to have this. Again, people are just chasing after it because of the box art for it. But it is something kind of interesting, and a lot of people don't realize that there was a physical release of Resident Evil on the Vita.
Oh, Epic Mickey 2 has quite an epic story, to be honest. This was a kind of a South American release only towards the Mexico country, where this is, for whatever reason, got an ESRB rating on it. And it was only available packed in with a PlayStation Vita, so a lot of people consider this as part of the North American collection. I chased this one for a little bit. It's kind of pricey in a sense, but it was just kind of interesting that some people count it as it, some people don't, and the fact that it has the ESRB, many people say yes, it is. But Epic Mickey 2, just kind of an interesting oddball out of the collection. Some unique things was Vita Island, which is basically what a lot of Vita fans called ourselves, that we were just out there was a few of us. But it actually created a lot of unique stuff. We actually have some pins here designed by a girl over in the UK. She had a Kickstarter for a bunch of these, and you can get special enamel pins that she created for various games. So the 3 I picked up, of course, have Hatsune Miku, Gravity Rush, and Steins Gate, which is probably my favorite visual novel on the PlayStation Vita.
And then we have these manuals by Sandeep, or Too Old for Gaming. He actually created these custom manuals for games that often didn't have them. So we have Persona 4 Golden, we have a couple here for Final Fantasy, uh, Darkest Dungeon, Soul Sacrifice, Danganronpa, Muramasa. There's all kinds of them. He actually created several different sets. These are still available on his website, toooldforgaming.com. If it's something of interest to you, it's kind of unique stuff. Sandeep also wrote a handful of books, actually a trilogy, on the life of the PlayStation Vita, explaining some of the unique things about the system and its games. Really good read if you're ever into something like that. Highly recommend it. And of course, limited run. If you end up buying or being one of the first people who got Breach and Clear, which was their first release on the PlayStation Vita, you got this neat little thing. Inside is a collectible coin and a unique card and a golden cartridge. It doesn't work, nothing on it. It's just kind of a enamel cartridge, which is kind of cool, and then the coin itself. I'm not sure how many of these actually went out. I don't think anybody has really said anything about it, but it's just something unique. And then, of course, I have one of my PlayStation Vitas over here. This is the white OLED version that came with like Assassin's Creed. I got this used from GameStop, pretty cheap. I ended up doing repairs on the sticks, and the shoulder buttons actually were bad, so I had to replace those parts, which taught me a little bit the insides of the Vita. And of course I have the acrylic standee for it. This one is not one that I use often. I've been thinking about using this one actually for my modded Vita and getting this hacked, but time will tell if I ever do that. Another unique thing is that PlayAsia had these East Asia soft releases of various PlayStation Vita games. I don't have a full set of these. I pretty much just grabbed the ones I really wanted to eventually play. I still have yet to go through all these. And then of course my copy of Disney Infinity with the Spider-Man Infinity figure and the game, which I was never big on those games, and I have yet to play that, but maybe someday we'll get to it. But yeah, these are pretty much most of the East Asia soft releases that I got. Kind of mismatched back there with some Sega CD stuff and the big Street Fighter for PS3 collection, and then some more that kind of sits on top. Unfortunately, I'm running out of room, so these are kind of where they stuck, and then you mixed in some of the collector's editions of various PlayStation Vita games that I didn't really have anywhere else to put, but they fit here because they kind of aligned a little bit with these versions. But yeah, these are pretty hard to get, but you can still find some of them on places like Video Games New York. They sell some leftover copies, although the popular ones are pretty much sold out, and a lot of them only had about 15 to 2,000 releases worldwide, which made them kind of scarce. And a couple of them, such as like Unmetal, being very sought after. I picked it up, I streamed it. Really funny game. Metal Gear Solid parody type thing. Really fun. I think it is on Steam. I was kind of hoping that this would actually get released on like PlayStation 4, but that hasn't happened yet. I'm not sure exactly where that stands, but that's kind of another unique release that was on Vita.
And there you have it, 400 physical Vita games. So, where do I go from here? Well, originally I was going to stop at 400 and finally call it quits at the PlayStation Vita. However, I've found there's still at least a handful of games I'm interested in trying out. And of course, we'll see what those are in the future. Lately, I've been gravitating towards the Switch, even though I'm not a big fan of that platform because, well, the only reason why is it's getting more and more English-related releases of Vita games that Japan got, effectively cutting down games I want to chase. If someone were to ask me what some of my favorite games on the Vita were, I would likely pick more of the action games like Neptunia U, Uppers, Muramasa the Demon Blade, and the Senna Kagura series, of course. I always enjoy some of the visual novels as well, like Danganronpa, as they were much like the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games, or Steins Gate, as I'm a sucker for a well-written time travel story. Just be warned that Steins Gate is a heart-wrencher, so keep some Kleenex handy. Ones to likely stay away from are the fighting games, which is kind of surprising being that I'm a huge fighting game fan. However, many are single-player games, and the controls on the Vita really aren't all that well designed for such. If you have a PlayStation TV, they play better, and you can use a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 controller, but many don't support two players on a single console. Surprisingly, the MLB, the show games are pretty fun, and I'm not a big sports fan, but the Vita had a handful of MLB, FIFA, and a single Madden game, which kept the amount of sports games to a minimum. Oh, and there's also a ton of Lego games, actually, if you enjoy some of those. But other than that, what about you? What are some of your favorites? Do you have a Vita collection? Feel free to ask other related questions below, of course, and leave a like while you're at it. That's pretty much it for now. So, as always, I thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.